Welcome, Gemini, to your June Moon Magic Deep Dive forecast for the ascendant, the Sun, or the Moon. The month of June has four key lunations, including at its heart a glittering new moon in your sign. But also, as we came to the end of May, a challenging full moon in the free-spirited Sagittarius. That provides a backdrop for the first fortnight of the new month. I'm going to unpack all of those energies for you. The moon's very much about nurture, protectiveness, security, our inner world. It can be about where we live, who we live with, and how, but also family dynamics. And by the end of the forecast, from a purely lunar perspective, you'll have a clearer picture of what the month of June holds in terms of your energy, work, relationships, or finances. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now to help it to continue to thrive. But please also click or tap the bell notification symbol. So as you came into the month, the moon's in the seventh house. Now, the moon ordinarily in the seventh house loves equilibrium and really appreciates harmony. But the sign of Sagittarius is a truth seeker, and it can also be provocative. It's mutable, so it will resist any kind of control, and particularly control of personal freedom or freedom to speak as we see fit. But ironically, on the other side of the heavens, Uranus, the planet of freedom, in a broad opposition with that moon. And ever since Uranus entered your sign towards the end of April, you may have found yourself resetting in a really fresh and exciting way. And perhaps someone's been finding that a little bit difficult to deal with. But that person may not have been particularly obvious. But then on the back of that lunation, Mars simmering away on the back burner, deeply, deeply out of sight in that 12th house, linked with that moon in a quincunx. So you may have found out that someone didn't have your best interests at heart. They weren't getting how unique you were. It didn't fit their program. And that may have required you to spin out, be more aware of what's really important in your relationships. And that may have been a need to step back and create some space, which Sagittarius energy is so much about. Fast forwards to the 8th of the month, the moon is in the mutable sign of Pisces. Here it's very sensitive, and the chances are in the following week that your feelings will be very much closer to the surface. So even if you did go through some kind of difficult event at the turn of the month and maybe some kind of reset around a personal relationship or an alliance, the moon here could still see you be just downloading the fallout from that and perhaps trying to work out whether it has in some way rocked your public profile. But it's also possible that if you're wanting to reset yourself in that very unique and authentic way with Uranus's help, that if you work in a bigger environment that's much more corporate or set and has expectations, you may start to find that even harder to fit in with. But that takes us to the very heart of this month and that brilliant new moon in your sign. Now, the new moon this year for you at 24 degrees and 2 is also flanked on either side by your ruler Mercury in the sign of Cancer, along with Jupiter, but also behind your sign Mars. So what we've got is Mars at the start of the month may have been a little bit problematic, but here can be very supportive. And I think it may be old connections you've had, old people, old alliances, perhaps professionally, that may be rekindled. It could be that your past experiences and knowledge can be repurposed in some kind of fresh way. But that link between the moon, the sun, and Mars, a semi-sextile, and Jupiter and Mercury, your ruler, a semi-sextile, can be extremely positive for you. And just to say, even if there was a relationship that wobbled at the start of the month, you get a chance to connect to someone new and exciting with Uranus in a dazzling link to Venus. So your words can still have an impact, Gemini, even if there was something that didn't quite work or maybe had run its course at the turn of the month. So a great chance to set your intentions when it comes to your individuality, your brilliant ideas, the way you can flex on a sixpence and really drive forwards again in a very productive way. That takes us to the second of the two quarter moons of this month, which ironically happens on the summer solstice almost immediately. So the summer solstice ushers in cardinal quadrant 2, the second 13-week quadrant of the year, and that cardinal energy of the sun moving into Cancer, which of course is ruled by the moon. So those energies of nurture and protectiveness are going to be very much to the fore, particularly vibrantly in the following month, but more broadly in the next 3 months. But the moon immediately is in the sign of Libra, which is very much the fifth house for you. It's about being very playful, affectionate, and social. And in fact, it forges a superb link to Uranus again. So Uranus turns out to be your ally as the month goes on. So you may find if you do something completely spontaneously, it could be a whole lot of fun. But because the sun and the moon are squaring, they're essentially aggravating each other. So as much as the moon in the sign of Libra can be about keeping things on an even keel, the sun in Cancer can be a little bit controlling. It wants to be very protective of its immediate environment. And for you, it's just suggesting, particularly around the use of resources, that you're not too free and easy with yours. The second, fifth house can be where you might be too generous to someone who perhaps is taking it a little bit for granted about the amount of support or even financial assistance that you may provide to them. Which brings us to the final lunation of the month, the Capricorn full moon of the 29th. But that so happens to be the day that your ruler Mercury begins the second of its two retrogrades this year, again in a water sign, in the sign of Cancer, which it can struggle with. However, on the other side of the heavens, the moon in Capricorn is very serious. It's thinking more in practical terms. The sign of Capricorn is about physical culmination. It's not so much how we feel, it's about what we build. And maybe is you're talking about a financial matter at the end of this month. It could be about who does and contributes what. Now, because Venus, the planet of charm, has been surfing its way through the glamorous sign of Leo from the 13th, the chances are you can use a lot of your personality power if you do need to talk about something like a contract. And Jupiter joins up with Venus on the very last day of the month, which is definitely going to empower your personal expression in the following 13 months. But if you are talking about the ins and outs and who does what around an emotional relationship, it's important to be very precise as this month draws to a close. I'm going to summarize those four areas for you of energy, work, relationships, and finances next, Gemini. But just to say, I've reduced the price of my personal horoscope reports. For many years, it was buy two, get 30% off. Because of the cost of living increases, it's now buy one, get three. The one you buy, your life roadmap report, helps us to understand the patterns that are played out in our lives. Free, your 12 months transit and your draconic soul analysis. Please see below for more. If you've yet to watch your June monthly forecast, please check out that on the screen. Your Sagittarius Blue Moon forecast on the screen. If you'd like to work with me one-to-one, it'd be an absolute pleasure. Please see my testimonials below. And if you've yet to sign up for your free daily written horoscope, fire to your device each morning for your early day celestial pit stop, you can sign up for that below too. So to summarize, The first two-thirds of this month can be very much about you being reacquainted with your personal agency. But it may be disappointing initially if there has been some tension or even conflict around a relationship that maybe you knew wasn't quite brilliant, but the way it all blew up as the month of May came to a close and June began may have been very hard to swallow. But you do have a chance to start enjoying Uranus's presence in your sign as the month goes on. And that really means that if something hasn't worked, don't give it too much of a backward glance. Uranus is very much about the future, but it's also about getting in touch with your higher purpose. So that means connecting with people that you feel at ease with, but most of all, you can stimulate your mind. That's a huge part of who you are. But if you are working in an organization which is a bit stodgy, that could be draining your energy. Which brings us to the new moon of the 15th. If ever there was a chance to set out your celestial store again, particularly professionally, I think this can be brilliant for both your work and also your finances. The glittering link between Venus and Jupiter, which reaches a peak on the 9th, but is in effect for week 2, can bring extra money in your direction. But I think it's Mars linking into that new moon, that 12th house Mars, this time an agent that reconnects you to influential people from your past in a way which could be good for you financially too. But as we draw towards the end of the month, what about those relationship issues? Well, I think you have a chance. Certainly, if you can enjoy good food and wine with Venus and Jupiter coming together to connect to people in a pleasant and enjoyable way. But I think that the financial part of your situation goes beyond just the neat money. It's more about your values. And I think because at the end of the month, we do have a full moon that's on that value polarity. If there is someone you really like, and you feel very comfortable with them, and there is that sense of attraction, but most of all, your values chime, but you can maintain that desire for a bit more independence, then you're going to be absolutely fine. But if you really like someone and drawn to someone, but actually your values are like chalk and cheese, that may be much harder for you. It's been a pleasure being with you, Gemini. All the best for June, and look forward to seeing you again soon.